This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
A short-lived political rap battle has potentially been brought to an end after a state Labor branch quickly and quietly removed its unauthorised response to a Liberal Party diss track, which has been criticised for referencing a highly offensive song. In a clashing of two worlds that perhaps should have remained separate, the Liberal campaign released its Leaving Labor bop earlier this week, complete with a music video and snarky lines attacking the cost of living crisis. Choice lines from the 1 minute bop included, "Bring them prices down. This is what we need because Albo's got to leave. Albo's got to leave. And I just want to buy some eggs and cheese. $100. You kidding me?"
You kidding me? Okay, is this from the Hole in the Budget guys? Did I hear that correctly?
Oh, yeah, that probably sounds right. Yep.
Yeah.
They gave us that banger that got stuck in our heads in 2022. But now they've given us this. Have you heard this?
No. Oh, yeah. You've played it to me over the phone.
It ain't the way that it's supposed to be. The money we're spending on groceries. I just want to buy some eggs and cheese. $100, you kidding me? It costs too much to live. The economy's looking a mess. So we living check to check. Labor got us feeling so stressed. We need to find a solution. We need to switch
Labor does have me feeling so stressed.
I just want to put food on the table. So I'm willing to do what I gotta. Bring the prices
It's just like that. There we go. There's the hook. You gotta listen to the authorization. Yeah, check this out.
Gotta leave. Hey. Authorized by Ahurst Liberal Camden.
Oh no. Okay, my issue with this is like, why didn't they just go like full Aussie rapper, like Aussie grime, hard out accent, the half American kind of accent, and I'm like presumably it's like trying to imitate like a Black American rapper voice. Is not hitting for me.
I mean, it's like cringe as hell. I think that's certainly been a recurring theme. But yes, we don't know the name of the rapper as far as I know. I guess like no self-respecting musician would actually release the fact that they're there.
Do you think it could be AI?
Yeah, well, it feels like it. I guess it seems like it's not outside the realms of possibility, particularly based on the quality. Some comments on the SoundCloud. Revolution is the only solution. Both parties are fucking cooked. And someone replied, "Not happening." All right. Vote 1 Greens. This is so cringe. Who wrapped this? Who accepted money to make this? How stupid. Cringe. This sucks ass. This shit gives me cancer. What an absolute piece of shit. That's the general vibe.
The general vibe. Yeah, but surely then the worst mistake, apart from the accent, which is absolutely horrible, is that they have modeled this not on Kendrick Lamar's like Grammy-winning diss response, but on the Drake version, which was just like universally accepted to be absolutely owned. Like he is the universal loser. Even Drake fans, I think, would accept he lost that rap battle. But that's what they've chosen to model their diss track on.
So that gets released. Wide opinion is this is awful and terrible and bad. And if you're a normal political party whose opponents have done this, you just stand back and say, this is ridiculous. Look how stupid they are.
Wow, really owned yourself. Yeah.
Well, Tasmanian Labor said, no, hold our beer because we could be shit. We could be more shit than you. On Thursday, Tasmanian Labor returned fire with its own bop. Stop using the word bop, news.com.au, which was underscored by the song KSI Sucks, Rice Gum and KSI Diss Track by controversial British YouTuber Harry Lewis, also known as WS2.
Also, bop is not an objective. Bop is a subjective term. I think these people maybe are confused with their slang and they think that bop just means song. Like for it to be a bop, it needs to be a bop. So either you think it's a bop or you are just a real journalist reporting it as a song. And it is not a bop. Anyway, continue.
Come on, Samantha Maiden. All right, now I haven't actually heard, I've read about this Labour response song. I haven't actually heard it. I think we have a little taste of it here. Let's check it out.
Let's fucking go.
Your diss track was mid. Why'd we have to wait 3 years for it? It's election time now, and you're still full of no plan, no clue, just more of the same. Cost of living's tough. People need a hand.
Where's the rhyming?
You're too busy playing tough guy for the cameras, man.
Okay. Doesn't scan. Doesn't scan.
I have to say though, this voice is less offensive to me.
At least it's like Australian, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm a nationalist when it comes to rappers. I think it should be Australia's first.
That's right. Yeah.
So we heard the lyrics there. You're full of shit. The song was initially published on Thursday before it was pulled hours later. A Coalition Campaign HQ spokesman also criticised Labor for using the highly offensive original track, which featured lyrics like, "Your family must have some R-word genes. You've got a girlfriend now, to be fair to you. So to tell me, did you sexually harass her too? Did you seduce her with your rape face?"
Wait, no, really?
This is the
Hang on,
original
so
song that they're riffing
Tasmanian Labor, like, is it Young Labor or something that produced this? Or was this actually, like, authorised by the political party?
It seems to have been authorised by the state branch of the Labor Party, and the federal party had to pull it. The Coalition HQ spokesman said it was up to Anthony Albanese to explain what has gone on here and to justify why his campaign has used this video. Given the Prime Minister himself attacked the opposition's use of a song in his campaign, this is a test for him that he has set himself.
Oh, who started
Think
it?
what you will about our diss track, but Labor's use of a highly offensive song raises serious questions for the Prime Minister and Labor HQ. They must be answered this afternoon. We live in the dumbest country in the world.
Yeah, the worst timeline. And I think I saw a headline recently that was like, is this the worst election campaign ever? And yes, definitively, yes, it is.
I just say to every young Australian who's proud of their grandfather who fought in the war, proud of a cousin who's serving in the Australian Defence Force now, understand that the Greens have complete contempt for our Defence Force personnel.
We're stuck with the hosts of Chapo Shithouse podcast.
Serious danger to Australia.
Well, it's almost over, everyone, so don't worry. We're only 2 weeks away. This is Serious Danger, a podcast about green politics in Australia. It's not an official Greens Party podcast. Not authorised, yo.
No, I don't think we need to be.
Who knows?
Still
Who the
unclear.
fuck cares? Come at us, AEC. We'll take the headlines.
Look, we just discuss politics. We have opinions, but we discuss politics. And
We're in
that
the
is the
sensible
primary
centre.
purpose of this entity, Serious Danger.
It's produced by Michael the Griffin. I am Tom Ballard on Wurundjeri and Bunurong country. With me, Emerald Moon. Happy Easter Sunday, Emerald.
Oh, thank you so much. Do you have chocolate on Easter Sunday? Is that a thing that you still do as an adult?
I have chocolate most weeks across my life. So
No, but in a different form, in egg shape, not flat.
It's not like I focus on eating chocolate on the specific Sunday. I'm eating chocolate now. I'm eating bunnies. I'm eating eggs. I'm going to Hagues. Love it.
Were you a eat all your chocolate on Sunday child, or a like hoard it for months and months, pretty much up until next Easter child like me?
Oh my God. No.
Yeah, I was a real freak for hoarding stuff.
Did your family have actual chocolate or carob? You were a carob family.
Look, we would yes, I was subjected to carob as a child, but not on Easter. That's sacrilege. My mum was raised a Catholic.
Oh.
She would never.
That's nice. That's good news. This week, we're going to be joined by, once again, our good friend, Max Chandler-Mather, the member for Griffith and the Greens spokesperson on housing, the housing champion, because, of course, we got these massive, big announcements from the two major parties last weekend about their terrible, terrible housing policies, and Max is going to explain why they suck so much.
Yes, it's a very good chat. Before we get into that, we are doing a quick roundup of other news this week. But first, a thank you to our new subscribers on Patreon as well. We have Binny, Sam, Levi, Violet HWP, Margaret, Jen, and Natalie, who all signed up to access the Patreon. It helps support the show. It's $3 a month or how much you want to chip in. And that basically is how we run the show. That's how we pay Mike's wages and get things done. And when you sign up there, you get access to an extra bonus episode every couple of weeks. We just released an episode for Patreon subscribers, Chapter 9 of Inside the Greens, Patty Manning's book that we have been reading, called Into Power, Part 1. Always a fun chat. We're almost actually at the end of that reading series, which has been very educational and enjoyable.
We've been laughing and learning.
We have funded, made possible with the help of the patrons. We've been able to pay Mike to produce some extra bonus candidate episodes leading up to the election. And we just released our special Fremantle preview where I spoke with both the Greens candidate, Amy Warren, and the independent candidate, Kate Hewlett. That was a very interesting and, honestly kind of uncomfortable, but, in a fun way chat. I really enjoyed that. I don't know. I've got, a fair bit of positive feedback on, people found that interesting. Did you listen to it, Tom?
I'm sorry. I'm halfway through. I've only listened to the Greens half, which is I'm a bad co-host and a bad friend. I'm sorry, but I'm really interested to hear the rest of it. Now, does Kate Hewlett, does she not being called a teal? Would she say independent? Or
she was she's technically not really a teal because she's not going after a Liberal seat, right? She's going after a Labor seat. She's so I'm kind of a brown. ish. Yeah, she doesn't identify as a teal, but I think it's still a helpful Climate 200, right? Label. Yes, that's right. To identify her as a Climate 2. She's funded by Climate 200. She's got that. It's that quote community independent model where they seek out a candidate to run as an independent on those values of like climate integrity and stuff. So
sweet. Well, yeah, thanks for doing that. I will definitely finish it, and I think it's good. I think it's good to get lots of different folks in. Destroy them, grill them, interrogate their ideas and explain why.
I don't think I destroyed anyone.
No, you destroyed it. You wrecked her. She's over. She's done. She's dropped out of the race. Right. We're going to do one more Can't Meet the Candidate bonus before Election Day. That is going to be with Sonia Semmons. So keep an eye out for that on your feed in the coming weeks. And also thanks to our patron Spirit of Anger and Hope, who we always love hearing from. No idea if they listen or not, but shout out to Annalise and Sahana in Hobart, who went on their first door knocks this week. We love to hear that kind of stuff.
Yay. Hell yeah.
More Greens MPs in Parliament means more people who are fighting for you, not for billionaires and big corporations. Vote 1 Greens. How was that? Was that okay?
That was brilliant. That was great.
Speaking of Tassie, before we have a chat to Max, some quick other news stories that took our fancy this week. First up, bad news. Bad news from Tasmania.
This did not take my fancy. This is sad.
No, this is the opposite of my fancy. A Greens candidate in a Tasmanian seat has dropped out of the federal election race after falling foul of dual citizenship laws for holding New Zealand citizenship. The Tasmanian Greens said 19-year-old Franklin candidate Owen Fitzgerald was unaware he held the extra citizenship. The situation is not Owen's fault. It was an administrative error in the party's candidate vetting process, Green Senator for Tasmania Nick McKim said. Mr. Fitzgerald's father was born in New Zealand, meaning he automatically gained the citizenship, and his nomination form only included the renouncement of his UK citizenship from his mother's side, but not his New Zealand citizenship. Due to the late timing of the disqualification, Mr. Fitzgerald is already on the ballot and can receive votes, but cannot win the seat. Franklin is considered one of the Greens' strongest lower house seats in Tasmania, although it was unlikely to threaten the sitting MP, Labor Minister Julie Collins. It's fucking happened again, Emerald.
Fucking Section 44. We hate it. It is ridiculous. It's so stupid. And that sucks. Like I think I saw a photo from the press conference about this, and the candidate Owen looked like upset, as you would be if you've poured your heart and, you know, time and everything into this. Yeah, and to now have to, I guess, go through the campaign and you just know that you've got no chance of actually entering Parliament would be really tough.
Does he still campaign? Do you still try and increase the Greens vote and still hold up the Greens vote? Is that important?
I think there would be value in that. But obviously it's going to do serious. You won't know what the vote would have been if people, like, if this story hadn't broken, if this hadn't been the case, because presumably a lot fewer people will vote for a candidate that they know can't win.
Yeah, and is there any laws about campaigning for someone who's actually ineligible? I don't know. I don't know about this stuff.
Well, it says that he can receive votes, but he cannot win the seat. So presumably, you can campaign for them, but.
Yeah, brutal. I mean, I don't know much about Owen. I know that that was the campaign that Bob Brown was leaving to take part in when we chatted to him on the show for Franklin. Franklin has obviously been, an area where the Greens would obviously love to build their vote for a long period of time. But, because of this shitty constitution that we have, it's no go. Dr. Kevin Bonham, who's the Tasmanian polling expert that lots of people know about if you're an Ozpol tragic, pointed out Mr. Fitzgerald issue in a post on X earlier this month. When I saw his form, I knew this guy is ineligible, he said. It was the same as Barnaby Joyce. Dr. Bonham said it was very sloppy by the Greens, who should have been across the issue due to the 2017 citizenship scandal that first claimed former Senator Scott Ludlam. Look, everyone's just tried their best, but is that weird? Is it kind of,
it
is this
weird.
A massive oversight?
Yeah. Like I have been on some of the, volunteer committees that are part of this vetting process for pre-selections, and it's like pretty thorough for a reason. And there's it is hugely fucking difficult and it can be confusing, but like we go through these thorough processes for this very reason. So I don't know what happened there. Like it is just, I guess something slipped through the cracks somehow, who knows? But it's a real bummer.
And if you know your dad was born in New Zealand, again,
it sounds like, from what the party has said, it wasn't his fault. So it's that I would read it. I don't know if this is the case, but I would read that like he probably did say, my dad was born in New Zealand, but no one told him, well, then you need to renounce that citizenship. I don't know if that's the case. That's just me speculating.
Yeah. In terms of like what happens next, Greens was sitting around 13% of the vote in the seat. I think Labor's about 39 or something like that, or maybe a little bit lower. Greens' preferences would be likely to boost independent candidate Peter George, who's being backed by Climate 200 and campaigning on anti-salmon farm issues, with Miss Collins, the federal fisheries minister. Senator McKim said it would be up to the party executive to decide whether it endorsed another candidate, such as Mr. George. Environmentalist and former Greens leader Bob Brown has endorsed Mr. George and signed up as a volunteer for his campaign. So that's another complication. It's like, okay, so are we trying to build the Greens vote?
Like after this Section 44 thing, or
yes. He was very much on board Owen Fitzgerald, but has now now that he's had to pull out, he's throwing his weight behind Peter George. So I guess he's taking the view that it's not about building the Greens vote. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Section 44 sucks so much. We don't talk about it enough. Do you think it's ever going to change? I remember when the scandal broke back in the day, everyone was like, everyone should sort it out. It's easy to sort it out, and we shouldn't have dual citizens serving in our parliament, and no one's going to vote for a referendum change, a constitutional change that makes politicians' lives easier. That was the tone of debate around it.
Right.
But it's so fundamentally anti-democratic and xenophobic, and it's just kicking so many people out of contention to be our democratic representatives.
Because I don't know if you caught this, but Kate, the independent for Fremantle, who we interviewed, had a potential Section 44 issue that she was like scrambling to resolve before nominations closed. And she made the good point that how hilarious that she has to renounce her British citizenship to get elected to Parliament, where she then needs to swear allegiance to the British King to serve. So it is fucking dumb.
God. Do you ever think it's going to change? Or, I mean, is
I don't
constitutional
know.
change?
Like, surely at some point it has to, right? But it's, as we know, constitutional change, Australia doesn't, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
We cannot overthrow capitalism just by killing a few CEOs. We need to do way more than that.
And this, folks, is how communism has been able to kill 94 million people.
The other story we were interested in was the one surrounding a good friend, our frenemy, Purple Pingers, a.k.a. Jordan Vanderlam. A Victorian woman has been left shaken by a bizarre break-in at a vacant property after the address was published online by a Senate candidate who called on followers to squat there. The intruders changed the locks and removed her belongings, leaving the Melbourne woman about $70,000 out of pocket after her insurance claim was denied. The person who posted the address, Victorian Socialist Senate candidate Jordan Vanderlam, aka Purple Pingers, said he would consider an apology to Carol and did not want her to feel bad. The aspiring politician's posts only call for squatting and do not advocate for theft or damage to property. Mr. Vanderlam said he would continue to help people in a housing crisis use vacant homes for shelter. All right, the details here are pretty crazy. We'll get into them in a moment. But what was your general impression of this particular story? A bit of outrage swirling around Purple Pingers, and it's complicated by a lady who seems to have had a pretty rough time. But yes, certainly raised questions and allowed some people to condemn the tactics of Mr. Purple Pingers in his quest to raise awareness and do something about the housing crisis.
I think it's a helpful and interesting lesson in like what happens when you're successful, like when your theory of change starts working. There's going to be hiccups and like things that you can't plan for, basically. And you can't have planned for or catch every time that there might be a story like this where, as I understand it, basically her father had died many years ago. It seems like it potentially even decades. Her father had died, left her this house. It was in pretty poor condition and she didn't have the funds. Like I think she was renting herself. She said she wouldn't be able to buy property if she hadn't inherited it, and so didn't have the money to fix it up to make it livable. It was deemed effectively unlivable, and she would kind of go and stay a few nights there, gradually try to fix it up, but hadn't got it to a standard where she could rent it or, well, she could have sold it in that condition, of course, but she'd chosen not to. And that's perhaps the sticking point. And then, yes, people, we don't know whether they saw it on the website, on Purple Pingers' website, but at some point, squatters have moved in, transferred bills, and she rocked up after not being there for a long time. She says, basically life happened. She hadn't been there for a while. And one day she rocked up and someone else had taken adverse possession or whatever it is.
Changed the locks, installed CCTV cameras, and a new heating system. So, I mean, it would be bizarre to rock up to a house.
It would be weird.
See that happen. You know, I mean, I think particularly condemnable is that the trespassers had like cleared out the house, sold a bunch of, or nearly all of her dad's stuff,
her father's
including
painting.
antique and sentimental stuff, right? Which is no good. Purple Ping has been condemned across the board by, well, not across the board by a few people. Anthony Albanese got up on his moral high horse, called him a disgrace.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever, bro. Jordan told the ABC, there are so many empty houses while people don't have homes, and I think that's disgusting. If you've got a house empty for 10 years and it's a spare house and you don't intend to live in it, you should sell it or you should let someone live in it.
Yeah. You can, and like I can understand her thing though, that clearly in this case, she's like, well, it's my dad's house. I don't want to sell it. And that's the difficulty. There's sentimental value there. But it's true that it is one of thousands of homes that is sitting empty of land that's not being used to house someone while people are sleeping on the streets. And I think the fact that, Purple Pingers, Jordan didn't blink in terms of sticking to his theory of change, his strategy in highlighting this aspect of the housing crisis is admirable because his point still stands.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, yes, it's messy and it's kind of it's sort of citizen, I don't know, it's not citizen journalism, it's citizen activism in a way. And as Jordan would argue, I'm not the government. And I'm just a dude with a website who was, is outraged by this situation. This is my imperfect solution to it. It has clearly helped a whole lot of people. Like, again, I feel like what's missing from a lot of this coverage is stories of people who managed to find shelter in an empty house that, aren't owned by as sympathetic people as Carol potentially. Like, that's sort of left out of the conversation. But of course, he's like, I would love to not be doing this. I would love for a government, the fucking prime minister who's calling me a disgrace, to actually do something about this and recognize that people's personal property rights should be trumped by the rights of human beings to have safe and secure housing. Seems pretty fair enough to me.
And drawing that comparison, I think, is what has really resonated with people. Like, I've seen some clips from, I don't know if he was on The Project or wherever he was interviewed about this, and he's posted it then on his social media. And he points out quite rightly that it is interesting to compare the outrage over this one instance, like this one kind of unfortunate circumstance, with the outrage over the reality of the housing and homelessness crisis. And he's sort of saying, why are you more outraged at this than the fact that, people are sleeping in cars and tents while homes are empty? So I think that's a very valid point to make.
Now, having said all that, this does seem particularly crazy. All right, I didn't realize this. I didn't know about this. This is the ABC article.
I know what you're going to say.
This is fucking crazy. Suspicion that trespassers plan to rent out the home. Carol described the events that unfolded at her house as bizarre. Neighbours said they saw people visiting the house during the day, but Carol found no indication they were sleeping overnight. There was a new bed, but no bedding. New towels still had their tags on. The trespassers' new fridge was turned off, although they had transferred electricity, gas and water accounts into a new name. If they were living here, there would have been signs of occupation, and there weren't. I think they were setting it up as an Airbnb, or they were going to rent it to some poor, unsuspecting person.
That was a bit of a plot twist, right?
We've got squatters turning into fucking landlords here, man. What the hell is happening?
I guess this is the problem, like when you try to make ground level change in an absolutely broken fucking system.
Right.
Oh, but I don't know what that is cooked. If so, I don't know what other evidence she had for that. It seemed like she was just kind of going off vibes, but cooked if so.
Yes, truly. I would love to meet the squatter who's like, hang on, we can make some passive income here, guys. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Very strange. At the end of this ABC article, I'd encourage people to read the pretty extensive ABC article that gives a big overview. But it was really interesting. Towards the end, it sort of says that Carol got screwed over by her insurance company, GIO, who said that she wasn't covered for this. She described that battle with the insurance company as the most traumatic part of the whole ordeal, which is kind of interesting.
That's skipped over a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, once again, this giant evil big corporation is fucking over ordinary people. What do you know? And it finishes by saying, Carol said she now planned to sell the home so she could move on with her life. It was a pipe dream that I would ever live here. Now, Again, and look, Carol's mother passed away in 2024 as well. So, she's had a tough time. Ordinary person. She's not a massive villain who's making, huge bucks out of the housing crisis here. That's totally fair enough. But when I read that, I was a bit like, yeah, I mean, this is where we need to come to as a country, to recognize that people's assumption that their control over the property that they own is sacrosanct, cannot be challenged, cannot be questioned, that the state wouldn't have any role in, potentially taking property on just terms from individual people to redistribute them to make life better for other people. Like, that's what's going to have to happen if we're going to seriously address the housing crisis, right?
And I think you pointed out that perhaps maybe it's only as of this financial year, but she would be liable for the new vacancy tax in Victoria.
Yes, the vacancy tax in Victoria is going to be extended from 2025. There's been a version of it for Melbourne since 2018. It's now being extended to all of Victoria in 2025. So, yes, she would have been liable for that. Presumably, she would have been paying it. I was reading around this a little bit. It seems like there are a lot of properties that are being missed by this tax. It's a tax that, in theory, property owners have to kind of voluntarily pay. And, of course, lots of people aren't doing that, and the State Revenue Office has to follow up. So that's an extra complication. But I mean, yeah, more of that, more punishing people for keeping land and property free and empty, while people as living and dying on the streets.
Yeah, as a way of bringing into focus getting you to really consider, is it worth you holding onto this home that you're not living in? I think that's fair.
Another crime against society: hyphenated names. Hey, lady, pick a fucking name, would you please? Pick a fucking name. Hi, I'm Emily Jerichow Fortescue. Hi, I'm George Jerk Me Off. Fuck you, too.
What's your deadline, Max?
I've got a pretty soft deadline. After this, I'm just going door knocking. So, if we lose by 2 votes because I didn't knock on those 2 doors, it'll be your fault. Yeah.
Max, this podcast is going to win you so many thousands of votes. You have no idea.
Well, I do door knock someone. Every now and then I door knock someone who says there was some serious danger.
See,
cool.
There you go. There you go.
And they're on the fence about voting for you, or?
Yeah, that's right. Like, Emerald and Tom made some really convincing points about why you should vote for Labor in Griffith. So that's what they said. Now I'm coming on to defend myself.
That's right. We're going to give you an opportunity to respond. Our guest this week is the member for Griffith, the Australian Greens housing spokesperson, and Crikey 2024's Shit Stirrer of the Year, Max Chandler-Mather. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, what an honour. Shit Stirrer of the Year. That's
incredible. Right. Just amazing. There was no cash prize with it, though, which I was a bit disappointed about.
What's the point? Yeah. What have you been doing?
Exactly.
That's all you were doing it for, right? All of
that's
that,
right.
Being such an annoying
10-year project in the Queensland Greens was about aiming for the award that at the point in which we started, the award didn't exist, but we knew it was coming. Yeah.
Yeah. Theory of change is to get the award created, win the award, question mark, full socialism.
After that.
That's great pressure working.
I assume after you win the award, they give you more public housing and rent caps.
I think so. I think that's right. Secured. Greens win. Also, quickly, but we're going to talk about housing primarily. That's why we wanted to have you on the show. But before we get into it, very important question. Do you reckon you're winning many votes on Strava? How's the Strava campaign strategy going?
Well, I'm a bit – the thing about the Strava, setting up the Strava account is it hadn't occurred to me just how public that was going to be. And if anyone follows it – obvious. It sounds obvious.
Do you know about this, Tom? Looks a little bit confused.
I have no idea what Strava is. Please educate me.
Okay, Max, you may need to explain. Give some context.
Okay, so Strava is like social media for runners and cyclists, basically, and a few other sports, but mostly running and cycling. And it if you wear a running watch, which I do, you at the end of every run, it automatically uploads it onto Strava and tells people how far you've run, where you've run in broad terms, and how fast. And I, at the start of this year, was like, I'm going to run sub 20 minutes for 5K. I used to be able to do it and actually got pretty fit. And then the cyclone hit and I just had to give up running for a bit while we were cleaning up after that. But now with the campaign in full swing, I'm only being able to run a couple of times a week. And my fitness is you can track it on Strava as my fitness just goes down like this. So actually it's more like a public humiliation ritual right now. But
Great. That's great. Yeah. That's really built in some humility.
Let's dive into it. Of course, a big housing week because last weekend you had the two major parties, I guess launching their campaigns as well as putting out their big fat election housing policies. Of course, both these policies are going to fix housing affordability, but house prices are going to keep going up. So it's a fascinating insight into how it's all going to work. In summary, we'll go into them in a bit more details, but Labor is talking about expanding the first home buyers guarantee and build 100,000 new homes over 8 years for first home buyers, whereas the Coalition is talking about income tax deductions for mortgage interest on new builds. Okay, and a little treat for Peter Dutton's son, Harry.
Of course, yes. That was revealed later on in the week.
Yes. So he wheeled his own son out to talk about how tough it is for Harry Dutton to afford a house. Is that right? He's sort of saying Harry's just not going to be able to do it.
And then refused to answer questions. Like, it's funny how the line, politicians are like all too ready to use their children, but then when you ask a question about it, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's just here to look pretty and read the lines we gave him.
No. It is interesting to me that the Liberals have felt compelled this campaign to do like renters' identity politics. Like, there's the like, was it Amelia? I forgot her full name, but she's like claiming to be a renter, but but actually
it's a
she
great
owns
Melbourne
investment
family. You watch your mouth, sir.
Okay, sorry. But owns investment properties in Europe. That's like, or in London, wherever it is. Is it like a Greens win that now Liberals have to be like, we're renters too? Like, but also secretly hold large investment portfolios.
We identify as a renter, yeah.
I mean, it's just trending. It's just what's hot right now.
She was defending it this week. She was saying, well, I'm a renter and I have investment properties. So I actually see the issue from both sides and I can actually appreciate it.
That's great. That's really good. That's what we need more of in Parliament. Yeah, I mean, it was quite funny, of course, for anyone who missed it, that Peter Dutton had his son Harry at this press conference. He's saying, we're going to help first home buyers get into the market. It's really hard right now. Labor's really fucked it up. And so Harry's there in front of the press pack saying, quote, I'm saving up for a house, so is my sister and a lot of my mates, but it's almost impossible to get in the current state. We're saving like mad. The reporters obviously say, well, your dad's got a little bit of money. He's got a few investments. Will you be helping him out, Peter? And he kind of just dodged the question a little bit. And then a couple of days later, he did say, well, yeah, we'll be helping them with a deposit at some stage. So that's good news for Harry. Good to hear.
Well, at least someone gets a home out of this campaign, Like,
that's the main thing.
That's right.
I suppose, yes, the question is, are either of those policies as announced by the major parties, are they any good? Is there anything to them, Max? Would the Greens support any of it? Are they onto anything here? Or is it all bad news? What do you reckon?
It's pretty bad news. It was fascinating to me, actually. I've never seen the major parties unite like every mainstream and like progressive economist before, but they managed to on these. I think the most mild language was they described both policies as the dumpster fire that will drive up house prices.
That was Chris Richardson, I think. An economist.
Yes, and it speaks to, like, if there's probably one policy area that really highlights just how hollowed out both major parties are and cynical they are about, like, an area of policy, it's probably housing, because they, with a straight face, say they're going to make housing more affordable and they want house prices to go up. And then are quite honest about announcing two policies that, like, I think one model said that in this year alone, under both their policies, house prices go up between 8 and 15%. And look, essentially what they're trying to do is pretend like they care without actually addressing the root cause of what's driving up house prices. And that's negative gearing of the capital gains tax discount. Like, it's one thing to give like little extra sugar hits to some people trying to buy a home. But if you're competing against an investor who gets a 50% tax-free discount on the profit they make from selling an investment property through the capital gains tax discount, and then can sometimes reduce their taxable income by like tens of thousands of dollars with negative gearing, thus allowing them to pay even more for a home, there's just no way we're ever going to be able to compete at a structural scale. So, yeah, this is sort of a dance where I have to say this is the most honest I've seen them both be about the fact that they just want house prices to keep going up. So in that sense, I suppose honesty in politics and integrity in politics.
Yay.
Yeah, but
honesty,
I have to say that
politics.
The Teals win. Yeah. Well, that's Biden. They finally delivered.
That's a Teals win.
But what was different this time, I think, was in the course of these 3 years, we've made this point repeatedly that like both major parties basically have a set of housing policies that are going to drive up house prices. And some economists have made the point, but everyone just sort of suspends reality and pretends like that's not the case. What was different over the last week and a half was like quite an open and honest confrontation of the fact, or confronting the fact that neither major party has any plan to actually deal with housing affordability or fix it. And you saw them squirm under questioning. Like, it was sort of interesting to watch at the start of the week that Michael Sukkar say, yeah, we want house prices to go up. And then they said sustainably, after Claire O'Neill, the housing minister, had previously on Triple J Hack, just like negged a bunch of renters and said, no, we want, renters may want house prices to stop going up, but we don't. We want them to keep going up sustainably. And then by the end of the week, you saw them under pressure. And then Michael Sukkar said, well, actually, no, we want house prices to go up less than wages. And so you saw this like squeezing on both major parties around that, which I thought was interesting.
But then he was like undermined by that, right? Like Dutton had to come out and clarify that was not the coalition's position at all.
Yes.
And that Sukkar had gone rogue there, and that actually because I think wages, this is a wage price index moment, but I believe it was like, wages have gone up by 3%, whereas houses are closer to 5%, right?
Yeah, big time.
And so, the idea that you would slow the growth of the house prices would be terrible news.
That's right. Yeah. And the other fascinating thing here is if you look at any public polling, so I think there's been 2 polls done by Essential and then by Ipsos around what the Australian public wants to happen to house prices. And on Ipsos, they asked like, is it good for the country? And then is it good for you personally if house prices keep going up? And even when they asked homeowners, is it good for you personally if house prices keep going up? Only 26% of people said yes. And then on Essential, when they asked that question, only 10% of people said they wanted house prices to keep going up. Like, it's actually sort of interesting where you have 2 major parties adopting a policy position wildly out of step with the vast majority of people. And they can't even come to what would be a fair compromise position, sure, of just saying, well, we don't want house prices to go up at all. And so it is, you can see, whether or not how much this cuts through is an open question, but I think this perhaps hopefully is the first step to a clarifying moment in the housing debate around accepting that if we want housing to be affordable, then we have to stop house prices going up. But
I mean, I mean, the Greens, so I think you said before, the Greens have said that we want house prices to, quote, stabilize. What does that mean?
Look, it basically means 0% growth.
Like relative, like relative to wage growth, or just
No, 0% growth. And I think that's a good compromise position between, like, there is a layer of people who have a mortgage and on a lot of debt that if house prices went down every year over the long term, that end up in negative equity, that owe more on the house than the house is worth, and that can be a big problem. So I think 2 things. One, like, you can achieve at least a big reduction in investor demand by scrapping negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount for investors with more than one property. Like, let people keep one if they've got it. And probably if you just phased out negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount like that, you would see house price growth get close to 0, I reckon. The other thing that we should be doing, this is what we've talked about, is investing all the savings of that money and setting up a government developer. Because, like, the reality is the private market's really cooked, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. But if you had a situation where, like in Singapore or in Europe, you had the government building good quality housing and then selling it and renting it outside the private market, but what we propose is just over the cost of construction, then you could actually start to get people, allow them to pay much lower prices than they otherwise would in the private market at the same time. But, this would take a few years, but if you think about it, like, if you're saving up for a deposit right now and you keep thinking you've got enough, but then house prices are going up faster than you can afford to save, or your wages are growing, you're cooked. But if wages keep going up between 3 to 4% every year and house prices at 0%, at least you feel like the house price growth just stops growing completely. At least you feel like you're catching up, which feels like I actually think the vast majority of the country agrees with that. Like, close to 80% of people agree at the very least house prices should stop going up. So I feel like that's beggars belief why the major parties don't adopt that.
Yeah. So I think this question of supply is perhaps, this is the conversation that I want to have, because you're right that, like, these policies from Labor and the LNP, they were the Liberals were widely panned. Economists are saying they're just going to drive house prices up. But economists, that I saw reported in mainstream media, most of them weren't saying primarily we need to reform the tax incentives like negative gearing and capital gains tax discount, they were saying the problem is supply. It's all about supply, supply, supply. And the major parties would argue that their housing policies have this balance between the demand side of things, enabling people to, whatever it is, access their super, have a lower deposit, blah, 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 to get in. And they also have a supply proposal. And they both have plans around construction and labour supply as well. So Labor's proposal, $10 billion to build 100,000 homes over 8 years, exclusively for first home buyers. How does that, there's very little detail on this. Like, how does that compare with the public developer proposal that the Greens have?
Yeah, great question. And just on the supply thing, like, there is a wild contradiction at the heart of that argument that you see the major parties make. Because they say, well, the problem is supply. Now, obviously in economics, famously, there's also demand. Like, there is supply and demand. And if you're giving property investors $180 billion in tax handouts to buy extra property, obviously that's going to drive up demand for housing and drive up the price. But putting aside that, right, you'd think that if we want to flood the market with supply to do what? Well, to reduce prices or to stop prices going up. But no, then they say, we want house prices to keep going up. So it doesn't actually even make any sense. Like, the policy outcome you would want out of increasing supply is to stop house prices going up at the very least. And they don't actually want that. In terms of how it compares, so this is one of those moments where it's sort of amazing how both major parties often get to play politics on easy mode. Now, the government has said, well, we're going to spend $10 billion building 100,000 homes. Now, that breaks down to $100,000 per home. It's just incredible. So they should let us in on how they've worked out how to do that. They can't say how much the homes will cost. At one point, the housing minister said, it'll be below market rate or something like that. And the Prime Minister contradicted her, or at least couldn't confirm that. They don't know. So they don't know who's going to build them. It seems like what's going to happen is it's just going to be subsidies for private developers to build them.
I've seen different things reported in different places. I've seen some places saying it's public, it's like state-owned developers. I've seen some places saying it's a combination of that and community housing providers and private developers. Very unclear.
It's hugely unclear, right? But then at the end of the day, it seems like what's going to happen is they'll just be sold to market prices, which is not going to fix the problem. And 100,000 over 8 years is not much if you think about there's 7 million renters in the country. Compare that to what we've proposed. And at the time when we proposed it, the hand-wringing from some journalists being like, the Greens haven't proposed enough detail. So here's to break it down and what we announced and compare this to the detail offered by Labor. We proposed to set up a government-owned developer that would build 610,000 homes over the decade. A portion of those would be sold directly to people who otherwise don't own a home, so first home buyers or renters. The price of that home would be 5% above the cost of construction, so to make money back on administration, etc. Now, the Parliamentary Budget Office said we can say how much it would cost. It would save the average first home buyer about $250,000 on a comparable private market home. So that reduces your mortgage by about $10,000 a year, by the way. You can do that because you're cutting out the profit margin that private developers charge. And then on the rents, we said the rent would be charged at 25% of your income or 70% of market rent, whichever is lower, to avoid the situation where, say, you get a pay rise and 25% of your income is actually quite a lot compared to private market rent. Now, that saves the average renter about $319 a week on their end. We can also say actually how much the whole thing is going to cost, because Parliamentary Budget Office said over the next 10 years, the impact on the budget, it's called the underlying cash balance. It's a boring name for how I measure impact on the budget, would be about $40 billion. And that's because the developer would own and sell all the housing and collect the rental income, which the government has confirmed how theirs is going to work. Now, you can imagine if you've got a universal scheme that any renter, say a teacher or a nurse, as much as someone on income benefits can move into this housing. That's a lot of rental and sales income, even though it's capped. So that offsets a lot of the cost of construction. So you end up making a lot of money that can be put back into more housing. And 610,000 homes, people are like, how's it going to do that? It constitutes every year about 30% of Australia's total private construction capacity. And at various points post-World War II in Australia, we were building closer to 50% was government-built housing. And so at the time when we announced this, and then they were like, well, how are you going to get the land? And we had asked the Parliamentary Budget Office to say, well, assume conservatively that rather than just leveraging publicly owned land, of which there is a lot in urban areas like state-owned and local council and federally owned land, let's assume that the developer has to purchase land at the commercial rate, something that the Labor Party hasn't mentioned how they're going to acquire the land. We laid all of that detail out, costed over the next 10 years, and we were told, well, the Greens are living high in the sky. It's unrealistic and you haven't given us enough detail. Compare this to Labor's policy. They can't say the price of the home. They won't say who built it. They won't say how you can build a home for $100,000 a pop. And they won't say how those homes will be allocated to first home buyers. So, yeah. And the reason we proposed this, maybe just to finish my rant, is you can see I don't get enough time to talk about housing. The other lie at the heart of this so-called supply argument is that somehow, if given enough money and incentives, private developers would go out there and build so much housing that they would drop the price of housing. Just out of the generosity of their hearts, they'd think, you know what? We're making too much money out of this housing system. We're just going to build so much more housing, which has never happened in Australian history. Because actually what happens is private developers sit on huge swathes of land. So AB Jennings, for instance, has something like, at one point on their books, 10,000 blocks of land approved for development. In 1 year, they released about a couple of hundred because developers will act like profit-hungry corporations. That's how they're structured. They will only ever build housing at a rate that ensures they make a profit. So unless you have a big government developer building lots of housing and flooding the market with genuinely affordable rentals and homes for first-time buyers, you're never going to fix that issue on the supply end. And if people are wondering if this sounds radical, that's what Australia did in the 20th century. Australia used to build huge amounts. It was called Housing Commission. But some of those homes weren't just rented to people on much broader incomes than what public housing is now. But a lot was sold to people as well and at genuinely affordable prices. And it helped keep housing much more affordable because private developers didn't have a complete monopoly over how much housing was being built in the country. So, I mean, it's amazing how Labor can announce this policy with next to no detail and face about half as much scrutiny as we face on literally telling people exactly how many homes, where they'll be built, by region, how much it'll cost, how much they'll pay in rent, how we'll collect revenue. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's frustrating. Yeah, I did think it was remarkable, particularly this element of Labor's announcement last weekend just seems to have had so little scrutiny that, no one really knows how it would work. But I guess that's because also all of the focus has been on what is the more maybe immediately accessible or recognizable or exciting element of their plan to the average voter, which is around extending the first home buyer's guarantee. Yeah. And so I think it would be helpful. I mean, obviously, yes, we've said economists say that both Labor and the Liberal policies are going to drive up house prices. Maybe to just quickly lay out exactly why that is, starting with this first home buyer's guarantee, which is about where you don't have to pay lender's mortgage insurance. If you just get a 5% deposit, then the government will guarantee up to 20% so that you don't have to pay that.
Yeah, really good question. So basically, in very simple terms, it's going to allow a large group of people who, by and large, would already have been able to buy a home, pay more for the price of a home. Because two things, if you don't have to pay lender's mortgage insurance and you only need a 5% deposit, obviously you can get a bigger mortgage, borrow more for the bank and pay more for the price of housing. Now, sometimes the barrier is getting enough for a deposit, but actually the biggest barrier is house prices keep going up and your income can only service a certain size mortgage without falling into mortgage stress. So I think we worked it out that say if you only take a 5% deposit, obviously your mortgage is going to be bigger because if you have a 10% deposit, you've paid more for the price of the house and you have to borrow less from the bank. Say in $1 million house, which is what the government says you could buy in Brisbane with this scheme, you need to avoid
because they're also, sorry, just quickly, because the other thing they're doing is lifting the cap of eligible homes from median to average for the area. So that's another change.
That's right. The income you'd need to be able to afford a mortgage and avoid mortgage stress, so paying more than 30% of your income on your mortgage, would be over $200,000 a year. Now, that's actually more than a federal politician earns. And I'm not saying that because I'm upset about the fact that
and that's why the Greens' balance of power demand will be an increase.
That's right. Politicians should be able to buy a home.
Well, maybe if you didn't give so much money to fucking free school lunches, you'd have a few more dollars in your pocket, right, mate?
And
that's on you, bro.
Exactly. So true. The other way to think about this is the reality is that everyone with access to this scheme, apart from the fact that most people would have already bought a home, but they're just going to pay for more. So that means that it's just going to put more money in demand for housing and drive up the price of housing. It's much like the first home buyers grant. Like that just gets priced into housing and then it pushes housing up more. Because if you're at an auction and you have access to this scheme, you're going to bid more to try and get that home, and that's going to push up the price for everyone. Now, compare that on the other end, on negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount, where you might have access to this home guarantee scheme, but you're going to be competing against someone with, say, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 or 20 investment properties. They're going to have access to negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount, two big tax handouts that may allow them to pay even more for the price of a home, which is why in most given quarters, there's close to double the number of property investor purchases as first home buyer purchases in this country. And over the next 10 years, the total value of those tax handouts is going to be $180 billion. One way to think about it in very simple terms is that is the government hyper-stimulating the property market with $180 billion in concessions for property investors. That just pales in compare that to the home buyers guarantee, which is just like a drop in the ocean compared to this giant, humongous whale-sized elephant that is those tax handouts. And the reality is...
whale-sized elephant.
Yeah, that's right. As long as you don't fix that, I just want to emphasize, is as long as you don't fix that, you're not going to fix housing. And in the past, Labor politicians have been honest about this. Jim Chalmers in 2017 in Parliament said, if you don't have a policy on negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount, you don't have a meaningful policy on housing affordability. Like, he said the quiet part loud. Yeah. The exact quote
and this
is
week,
even
I don't know
more...
if you saw the leaders debate, Max, but this has now become a political attack. The idea that Labor did some modelling on potential negative gearing reform. This is now a political attack that the coalition are trying to whip out. Like, you're not even allowed to model or potentially look at the possibility of maybe doing something about that.
It's Albanese's secret plan to actually do something about the housing crisis. And Albanese's like, no, I don't.
No.
I do not have a secret plan to actually bring down house prices.
Wanting to do anything, you bastard.
It's a lie.
It's really typical, I think, of Australian politics at the moment is like, Labor has a secret plan to do something that's wildly popular. They have we will not do that popular thing. It's like, they're like, we need to put out a press release to just assure people nothing will change. We're just like, I know that, like, you know, there are people out there right now in tears because they can't afford to buy a home. I want to guarantee it to you, we're not going to fix it. Just like,
don't worry, everyone.
Yeah,
we
promise
commit
to
not
you.
doing anything about it.
Yeah, that's right.
We will make things
like
worse.
It is that Simpsons meme, you know, it's like at the Republican and Democratic convention, it's like cuts to the Republican convention and it's like, we're evil, you know, like the Liberal Party, like we're evil, we hate everyone. And then it cuts to the Democratic convention and it's like, we hate ourselves and we can't govern. Like, but anyway, look, I do have I genuinely think the way I think about negative gearing and capital gains tax discount at the moment and reforming it is it feels like it's one of those ideas whose time has come. Like, all the polling says now that only a small minority of the country wants them to be retained the way they are currently. The vast majority of the country now wants some form of reform to negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount. I think the other thing that's changed is a much higher proportion of people are confronting the fact that not only they may never be able to buy a home, but crucially, their kids and grandkids can't afford to buy a home. And they're starting to think of that in the material circumstances. And I have people, I'll donor people like, look, I use negative gearing, it's got to go. Like, otherwise my kids will never be able to buy a home.
Yeah. But they're all still stuck in 2019, right? They still can't divorce themselves from the idea. The narrative that took shape out of the 2019 election, which is you cannot win an election by saying that you are going to do anything about negative gearing, which is bullshit at the time and is even more bullshit now, 6 years down the track, as the housing crisis has got so much worse. And everyone knows
Big time. The one argument you've seen them both make against it is, it'll affect supply, which it is so self-evidently not true that if we had a better class of journalism in this country, it would take open one website on the Australian Bureau of Statistics and click on one link But of course, that's beyond most people. Like, just in case your listeners are wondering, over 80% of all property investor purchases are of existing property. They're not building new stuff. So if you think about it, if the policy intention of negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount is to encourage supply, it has an 80% fail rate on $180 billion over the next 10 years, which is pretty catastrophic. And imagine, by the way, think about it in these simple terms. What if we didn't give that money to property investors, but instead we gave it to a government developer to build housing directly? Then 100% of that money would go on new housing, as opposed to 20, like less than 20%. So just, you'll hear that argument sometimes and you can just be like, well, that doesn't make sense. The final one, just so people can get rid of the objections, it'll drive up rents because there'll be less rental properties in the rental market. Now, that would make sense if every time a property investor sold a home, it burst into flames and then disappeared, which I'm sure some property investors might want to do. But like...
Insurance reasons.
Yeah, well, no, of course not. But crucially, what happens when a property investor sells? Well, either they sell to a renter buying their first home, in which case there's one less renter in the rental market, or they sell to another investor, in which case it's the same rental property in the rental market. So it doesn't have any net effect on the supply of rentals. And crucially, if you spent all the money on actually supplying affordable rentals, it would actually increase the supply of affordable rentals. So those are the two arguments.
Yes, and we have the lived experience, the lived example of in the 80s for the short period of time in which negative gearing was abolished, and there was no clear impact on rents whatsoever. Rents went up in some parts of the country, down in others. Yeah, we lived that experiment. We've seen it, and it didn't drive up rents whatsoever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the Liberals would say, like, if we're talking about new housing supply, that's where I suppose their proposal around these tax write-offs come in. So that was Labor's plan, was the extending the first home buyers guarantee and the new money for new homes. The Liberals is perhaps even more just like wildly economically reckless. It's pretty astounding that they're even just at this level of desperation, they're throwing this out. But it is income tax deductions for, the interest payments on the first $650,000 of your mortgage, only for new build homes. I will say, like, when I heard this initially, I didn't catch the new build homes part, and I think a lot of people wouldn't have, and they would have been like, oh, wow, that's, like, to be honest, hey, that's pretty attractive, right? But it is like, so fucking inflationary and counterintuitive to what we actually need to do.
Massively. And actually, the modeling on that seems to suggest from SQM that under the Liberals' house prices in 1 year would go up 15%.
Incredible.
Just to give an idea.
Well done. Thanks, Peter. Harry Dunn's like, oh.
Oh, no.
And if you think about
the wages that go up like 16%, right? So it'd be fun.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. That's right. Exactly. And if you think about just how bad it is, like, so it's only for new builds, which means the net effect of their policy is going to be drive up house prices by 15%. And because most people are purchasing existing homes, they're not even going to get access to this scheme. And then they're going to have to go into a housing market where housing is 15% more expensive in a single year.
Because existing builds compete with new builds too.
And again, just think about it in these terms for both major parties. It is sort of incredible how many backflips, twirls, fancy, like, sort of like get rich quick schemes, like sort of like the scammer in the car park type policies they need to announce just to avoid touching negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount. Like, they would rather hyperinflate the housing market, just flood it with so much cash, than fix the problem. And think about that every time you see one of their, like, then you get, and I think about it in terms of like get rich, it's too good to be true. Like, we will fix housing and we won't affect house prices. In fact, we'll keep pushing them up. Everyone will win, but then first home buyers will win as well. And it's like, that's not how it works. It's like saying the equivalent of saying, we're going to fix energy prices. We're going to make them more affordable. How are you going to do it? We're going to push up energy prices by 15%. Well, how's that going to work? No, they're going up, but it's going to also be more affordable. And how's it going to be more affordable? We're going to push them up by 15%. Okay. How am I going to pay my bills? Like, how am I going to afford my energy bill? we're gonna have this deposit scheme where you can deposit less, but you'll end up paying more, but it'll be fine. Like in any other area of policy, it wouldn't make sense, but it does in housing because up until recently, this maybe last week, the media and like media class has just allowed both major parties to suspend disbelief and pretend like you can't fix housing without affecting house prices.
Yeah. And I mean, meanwhile, like
it's the Joe Hockey quote, sorry, looming over all of it. You remember that Joe Hockey quote? If homes in Sydney weren't affordable, people wouldn't be buying them. That's just echoes for decades.
Someone
and that will echo
can
throughout
afford
all
them.
Australian
Someone
history.
can afford them. Yeah, I can afford them. Yes. And it is worth noting, I think, as well, that like all of this discourse is around, like there's this real focus kind of, it's what the word, it's like virtue signaling, this focus on first home buyers as well. And I think it's worth noting that the Greens plans, on the other hand, are like for everyone, like for the, 60-year-old woman who's maybe just gone through a divorce, who might have owned property with her partner, but is now on a way lower income, can't afford the rent and can't afford somewhere to buy. That is, these are the people, and renters, of course, neither of the major parties are in any way offering anything for renters.
Yeah.
All of these people are just forgotten, even if you accept the lie that their policies would help first home buyers, which they won't.
Big time. Yeah, pretend like actually on the rental market side, they just pretend it's this like it's the tide. Oh, yeah, it's just this thing that happens we have no control over. Sorry that you got evicted because you can't afford the rent. That's terrible that the market did that. What's the market? We don't know.
Sad.
We've never met the market. We don't know who the market is, and we're not going to tell them to do anything. Like, that's right. And yeah, and Emerald, that's bang on about that person you described. Like, I spoke to a woman 2 days ago, and I don't know, it was sort of incredible. Like, I was chatting with her on the phone. She's just a constituent in Griffith. 2 kids, recently divorced, lost her house. It's like she owned a house with her partner, her husband, and now she's just a renter and she's on a good income. Like, she works a good job, she works in finance, and she's like, I can't afford to buy a house. And I'm terrified because now I can't pass on any assets to my kids. I don't know how they're going to buy a house. I'm paying a huge portion of my income on rent to stay near where my kid's school is from after the divorce. And neither major party has anything for that person. And that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And like, again, like when it comes to housing policy on these things, Spain and France have caps on rent increases of 2 to 3%. And rents, weirdly enough, in Spain and France are going up much slower than they are in Australia. And countries are like Vienna, for instance, they have basically a government developer. And if you're someone in that position, you can move in, be one of the 60% of people in Vienna who live in some form of rent cap, government or community built housing. And you can rent in a 2-bedroom apartment in the middle of Vienna, one of the most desirable cities in the world, for $253 a week Australian in rent. Like, none of what we're proposing hasn't already been done around the world. And such is the corporate capture of politics. Such is the nature of our major parties, so enthralled to the property and banking industry that they would rather that single mum move into her car because she can't afford the rent than enact policies that work around the world and protect her and give her a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, that is the active choice that they are making. It is a miracle that for them, that more people are not angry at them. And they rely on the political cover of a media establishment who like to set the terms of debate on. Their terms of debate are, for that person, well, she could sleep in her car, but she might get a little bit more rent assistance. And she wouldn't get rent assistance, by the way, actually, because she earns too much. But we can't do anything about that, even though we've done stuff about that in the past around the world. And for both major parties, renters are just cannon fodder, despite the fact that they're 1/3 of the country.
Yeah. Well, if we want to keep someone in Parliament who is actually talking about these things and standing up for these people, we should probably let you go and do some door knocking. But it's been lovely having you back on the show. Before we go, what's the best way? We've only got 2 weeks left, pretty much, or less than when this episode is airing. So how can people support you and your campaign?
Well, and wherever you are across the country, your local Greens campaign, look, 2 weeks to go. And I would say is, you know why groups like Advance, these like far-right groups, people like Gina Rinehart, Clive Palmer are spending so much money attacking the Greens? Because believe it or not, despite the bleak nature of the world right now, there's a genuine, real almost once in a generation opportunity that we end up in a minority parliament with the Greens with genuine leverage that not only keeps Dutton out, but actually gives us power to push Labor in a genuinely progressive direction. And we have 2 weeks left. And if you, and the question I always ask anyone on this is, are you willing to fight for someone you don't know as hard as you'd fight for yourself? Like for that single mum we just talked about, for the people one rent increase away from eviction, for the people giving up on ever being able to buy a home, for all of these people for whom what happens on that election night could well determine their material future, not just yours, not just your relatives, but them as well. And we have a genuine chance to do it. And it's a rare special privilege. So leave it all on the field. If you're good at door knocking, door knock like 4 times as every weekend. Like give up that lunch like with friends and go door knocking. If you're not comfortable door knocking, letterbox as much as you can. Get on pre-poll, get on polling day. If you're not comfortable doing that, talk to your friends and family about voting Greens. Like that can be the most powerful conversation you can have. Politics is not easy. It is not a walk in the park and it's going to leave you really tired, but we're up against a property and banking industry who would rather push more people into homelessness than fix the housing system. That's the caliber of people that we're up against. So we need to, on our end, use the one asset we have, which is there is more of us than there is of them. And 2 weeks, leave it all on the field, push as hard as you can. And then at least on election night, you can be honest with yourself and know that you were in a position to help and you did everything you could to do it.
Hear, hear. You heard him, folks.
God damn it.
Put down the phone, go fucking talk to some people.
Yeah.
Thanks,
or just
Max.
do a podcast, whatever works.
Share this podcast. Call to action.
Yeah, exactly.
MaxChandler-Mather.com is the website for Max's campaign. But yes, no matter where you are, reach out to your local campaign. Pre-poll is the massive thing. Get on the booths. It's a really
And
easy
election
job.
day.
It's a really important
Are
job.
you rostered on? Get your shift.
I'm doing
Good.
4 hours there, baby. I'm going to do it. Thank you, Max. Godspeed. We're rooting for you. And thanks for talking us through those terrible housing policies and also the Greens' good ones. We
And the good
appreciate
ones.
it.
Thank you.
Serious danger to Australia.